Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the UK Airshow Review podcast, a podcast we've started because we have no air shows to review. My name is Sam Wise, who you might know as Wissam24 on our forums, and with me today are...
Ian Garfield, I'm Ian G on the forum.
Tom Jones, I'm Tommy on the forum.
I'm Dan Ledwood, and I'm Leadhead27 on the forum.
And I'm Dominic Vickery, username Dom Vickery on the forum.
Obviously on the airshow front this year, things haven't exactly gone to plan. COVID-19 is taking its toll on the world, and an admittedly minor casualty of that has been the airshow industry. In lieu of our meetings that we would normally have at airshows, photo shoots and other aviation events, the UKAR writing team have decided to start this podcast to chat about our thoughts, the impact the loss of our favourite hobby is having on us at the moment, and reflect on any memories of airshows and aviation stuff that we have. The UK Airshow Review podcast is going to be a pretty laid-back format, the kind of chats we normally have in our messaging group, but hopefully with a little less swearing. We're all pretty new to this podcast stuff, and it's been put together a little bit impromptu, so please bear with us through any hiccups and bumps along with the way. Audio quality might be a little lower than you'd expect from podcasts you might already listen to as a result, but we're aiming to improve that soon, so please hold with us. We're recording this first episode on the 10th of May 2020, a week after the airshow season would have started. By now we would have had the Shuttleworth premiere, Cosford night shoot, Northolt night shoot, Yeovilton shoot, and any VE Day events that were meant to take place, and of course we would have been having the regular Thursday RIAT updates. Apologies if I've missed any events there. So, how are we feeling now it's finally sunk in?
I just miss air shows, man.
It's weird. I think the weird thing for me is just sort of not every day going, oh, this is an update for this, and then popping it on social media. It's just that void of just nothing, which sounds really bleak, and it's not meant to sound that bad, but yeah, it's just odd.
I think the fact that you've got events like Shuttleworth that, whether you go to it or not, it marks the start of the season, and that's a big deal, and you see people talk about it, and then suddenly, given everything that's going on in the world, and given how much personally I've been finding things just run together with all the working from home stuff, that it just came and went, and having that first weekend of May just not really meaning anything was weird.
You don't even have to go to those first air shows. It's just sort of it's just the atmosphere in the community, the buzz of when the air show season starts that's obviously missing this year. Because even if you're not there, people who were there, they're getting their shots onto forums, onto social media, onto their own Facebook pages, and there's always stuff to discuss. You know, there's a new scheme on a warbird, there's a new display pilot that's sort of tweaked the display, or there's a great topsides that that no one realised you could get from Abingdon, or like, oh my god, the BBMF is suddenly topsiding Shuttleworth. Look, that's great. And it's that sort of buzz that's the start of the airshow year. And also the PDAs, I didn't realise, but I never really paid much attention to when the RAF got their public display authorities, for Typhoon, Reds, BBMF, all that stuff. But they made a big deal of it on social media, and you sort of just absorb. It's just through osmosis, it just comes in, and then suddenly it's like, gosh, there's none of that. And there is a void, and the sort of the PDAs are always like the sort of almost the Christmas Eve to the airshow season. They were like, right, it's coming, this is happening now. So yeah, it's just a weird time.
I think that's quite a good point, because you maybe don't appreciate it in a normal year because you take it for granted, but the whole season really does start a long time before the first show, because you've got updates,
usually
you've got PDAs, you've got new aircraft coming on the circuit, and warbirds and stuff, and there just hasn't been any of that. And yeah,
it's not just that, it's also like magazines, I don't subscribe at the moment, but for a long time I was a subscriber of Flypast, and every sort of, I think either every March or every April, notwithstanding that the issues, so the March issue will come out on the 1st of April, which is always been a bit weird to me. I don't really understand that, but sort of the precursors of the season, there would always be a sort of a guide to air shows that year, normally written by Ben Donnell, and it was really good, and you were like, right, brilliant, and that's when you start thinking about it. And it's things like the Duxford Diary, the ongoing ongoing sort of updates of what's happening at Duxford. You can work out which warbirds are being flown, or whatever else, and it's just that whole buzz that's just missing, which is it's just very odd, very odd.
I just found it really strange. Living where I do, the end of the literal corridor, and big enough work, you see like an Atlas or a Hercules going over, and you run outside, and it's a plane. It's probably the only thing you're going to see this year. It's don't normally take any notice of stuff like that, but
anything,
rushing
just
out
take anything.
and seeing it, and even when like Bryce Norton have put on Facebook that they're going to be doing circuits at Cardiff or Birmingham or Edinburgh or something, we've all rushed and said like, you might see this. That's it.
Yeah.
It's normally you probably wouldn't take that much notice of it.
But ADSB like on the phone, like
Yeah,
checking the updates.
yeah. Well, I live. Well, Dan could probably tell you exactly what it is that I'm under. But it's like one of the turning points for Heathrow and Luton or something.
It's a holding point. One of the so where you live, Sam, is the northeast holding point for Heathrow. So I imagine particularly for you, it's sort of bizarre to have such a quiet sky at the moment.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that living where I am, and actually I work under the 27 approach into Heathrow, so the noise of like airliner noise just generally doesn't mean anything to me, because it just I don't turn my head for it. And now I'll be sat out in the garden and an A320 or something goes over, and I'm like, wow, what is that? Straight on flight radar 24. Wow, look at just interested in what it is, which I just never have done before.
I'm very much the same. I mean, at the moment, sort of where I live in Edinburgh, you occasionally get something going past, and obviously from like the line of work that I've done, I'm quite used to it. But I think
what was that, Dan?
Ex-pilot. But something as mundane as I think it was a KLM A330 went there. I was like, wow, that's really different. Like, wow, there's something in the sky, and it's like everyone's contrail spotting now. Everyone's a dot spotter all of a sudden.
I think I found as well that even people that aren't into aviation, especially I live in Birmingham, I live by the flight path of Birmingham Airport, and this week alone we've had C-17s, A400s, we've had a Merlin, we've had a Shadow circuit bashing, we've had a Juno. Everyone who's not even into aviation started to notice these big grey massive aeroplanes they're massively different to normal as well. So I think that's bringing out a lot of people bringing into aviation as well.
I'm just looking now at so it would have been Shuttleworth's season premiere on the 3rd of May, so at the time of recording, the weekend just gone. And actually, the only thing that they managed to confirm before it was cancelled, you would have thought it'd be quite a lot, because it seems like lockdown and the way everything was cancelled, it doesn't seem that long ago. They only confirmed the Catalina, that was it. There's nothing else confirmed, even the home stuff.
I think it's maybe softened the blow slightly, because there were no shows really where anything. Well, Yeovilton in typical form had, I think, got a few corkers in already, but obviously nothing had really announced much. There was nothing to say, wow, there was nothing that's going to be, this is the first debut of da-da-da-da, this is going to be the premiere of this and that. So there's nothing truly, in as much as obviously it's annoying that all the shows aren't going on full stop, but there's nothing truly gutting that we're going to be missing. I'm sure there would have been, but that has made a difference, I think. Well, certainly not made a difference, because the shows aren't going on at all, but it's made it slightly easier, perhaps.
I see your point. I think it's better to have not known what the year could have brought than known it and then lost it, because it's sort of like you get hyped up, you see like last year React confirmed Turkish Phantoms or something, you get really hyped up, you're like, oh my god, I'm really excited to see that particular type. It's been on my list for ages, I really want to see it.
I was thinking that yesterday, is imagine React obviously cancelled quite early on, smartly so as it turns out, but imagine if they had got to like this point and had quite a lot of stuff lined up potentially already. It would have been devastating.
Yeah, it would have been, and it would have been for. It wouldn't have got this far anyway. You can't lock down a country and then think. But yeah, you're right. It would have just been. Well, where are we? May. Yeah, I don't know. When are all the sort of the really what most people consider juicy items? When are they sort of confirmed? I know, like,
Stuff gets confirmed. I mean, last year the Harriers were the first thing, weren't they?
yeah, you're right. Very fair point. Yeah, and then they doubled it, didn't they?
That's right.
But in a similar vein, say when the Ukrainian Su-27 turned up in 2017 for the first time in however many years since, what was it, 1997?
What, displaying?
Yeah,
It's obviously-
it's
it was
just
on
started in
static in
2011.
2011.
But when it was confirmed in as displaying, that was like, I think was that what, like 2 weeks before or something? And even then, it was like some Ukrainian newspaper broke the news, and everyone was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god,
That's right.
is this translation right? Is this happening?" So I don't know. Yeah, we probably would have had. I mean, there would have inevitably just been the regular stuff that we would have been excited to see.
And all of that does lend weight to the argument that they shouldn't announce so much in advance. Like the Israeli Herc that turned up, that was just on the sheet one day and was like, "Hang on."
Yeah, that was
Yeah, it's just
incredible.
Sam. I remember sitting with you at like Park and View and just being like, "Hang on, what? It's got to be a misprint, right?"
Yeah, yeah, that was cool. I remember which year it was, but I do remember the when it was Greece was right in the midst of its economic crisis, and we looked at the sheet and there were like 4 F-16s down for some reason.
Yeah,
It was just like, how can they afford this?
yeah. That was a typo.
Was
I
that
think.
not the same show where was it the Greeks and the Turks ended up turning up like one after the other?
Yeah.
Or
that
something
that
like
happened in
Turks-
2016, and
The Turks
The-
had
That was
to
it.
hold
there was a
for the
the
Greeks.
Solo Turk and the Turkish yeah, that turned up.
KC-135.
Which incidentally as well, that KC-135 apparently was part of the
Mhm.
military coup the week after. So, but that turned
Yeah, it
up,
was.
and
It
they
was
all
only a
rolled
week later,
round
wasn't
P&V
it?
West, and then next in line were the Greek Phantoms that landed, and they came around P&V West as well. So they sent the Phantoms into static at the western end, but the KC-135 and Solo Turk, if it's entirely from memory, had to hold at the Bravo point of the runway. So the KC-135 did the western loop and then was going to go back on the runway to backtrack down, and the Turkish Phantoms were going to take the taxiway all the way into static. And yeah, there was a point when the Turkish KC-135 was holding and the Greek Phantoms taxi behind it. And it's one of those things you don't really think of, but these two nations have been at war, and I don't think there's another airfield in the world where that would have actually happened.
It is incredible. It was one of those moments like, is this a diplomatic incident, like right before our eyes?
And no one cared. No one said anything. Nothing was made of it at all. It was just like, gathering NATO aviators, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's it. I imagine all the pilots probably thought it was pretty funny between them.
Top bands.
I am going to miss Riyadh this year, big time. It's such a... Because that's the thing, for us, and for so many people in the hobby, it is like... It is an... You define your year by it to some degree. It's that event in the middle of the year.
I hate to coin a cliche phrase, but it's. I mean, I'm unfortunately I can't do it. Used to be able to because of work commitments, but it is a pilgrimage. Like, we spend almost a week there, just watching planes, and then we go back to normality after that. So as you say, it's a huge part of the year.
It's very much the worst day in the year is the Tuesday after React, or the Wednesday, whichever day. You go back to work or back to reality, I suppose. That week after React is the worst week in the entire year.
Yeah, it's like a hangover.
It is strange because actually it's only 5 days, Riyadh, 6 days, but it seems to go on so long because the days are so long and you get up so early for Park and View every day, and the days themselves are so busy, and then I always feel like it takes forever, and then at the end of it that first day seems so long ago, and there's always that weird feeling as you get towards the end of departures on Monday. Hopefully it's a sunny day, but you get towards the end of the day and it's like just feeling almost a little bit sad because it's coming to a close, but tired, almost a bit relieved that it's all over to some extent, and just knowing, particularly if there's something you're waiting for towards the end of the day, just feeling it all coming to an end. It's bittersweet, I suppose.
You're also usually ridiculously sunburnt by the end of it all as well.
The sun, last year's departures, the sun was out for like an hour, and I managed to go bright red, which is unusual for me. I usually don't burn at all. But yeah, that was annoying.
I've learnt that lesson from air shows many a time. Carry a bottle of suntan lotion in the bag.
The first time I got properly burnt at a show was the first Waddington I went to, which was only 2013. And I remember I had a grandstand seat, and I put some sun cream on when I parked up. I was in the car, I put it on, and then I didn't put any on for the rest of the day. And it was a scorchingly hot day, really, really hot, really, really sunny. And of course, you're facing into it all day if you're on the crowd line. And I remember at the end of it, the tops of my knees were just red raw, and I was like aiming Tom, we've just had an image of Tom's cat walking in front of his webcam. And I remember trying to blow the air vents down onto my knees to cool them down. They were that sore. Oh, it was agony. And I learnt my lesson after that.
Worst sunburn that I think I've had at an air show was Fairford 1991. Me and my sister got absolutely burnt to a crisp. I think that's one of my first air show memories. We went to Millwall in the 80s, but 91 sticks in my mind quite a lot. I remember going to school the week after, and you could hardly move. My sister was covered in blisters. Yeah. I still haven't learnt a lesson from then. So.
Well, I was going to say it should be something you do only once.
It's a bit like getting too drunk. You say, "Oh, I'm never going to do that again," and then you end up doing it.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things though. It's like you're also, even more than when you're on holiday, you're staring up into a bright sky, even when it's not sunny. That's what took me a while. I was like, how am I getting sunburn when it's like an overcast day? But you're staring up into quite a bright sky for. Like, when else would you do that?
Yeah.
You do that in your garden, you're half blind, like, it just really, like, it's crazy, but...
You're standing up outside in a field for 10 hours.
Yeah, that's all you're doing, and there's no... Because it's an airfield, there's nothing really... There's very little else to break
that's the
wind
thing.
As well, and the elements.
Because what we're doing is so nerdy, and you don't tend to associate nerds with getting well tanned.
So what I've learned is you have to differentiate it with Cosford. You're facing to the sun, so you get your front done.
Yeah.
Then a couple of months later, go to Fairford to get your back half done.
Yeah.
Works out quite nicely then. But that's the thing, is so much the hobby is just stood outdoors all day. Or sat out.
It's one of those things, and because I always wondered, I was like, how do I get more burned at air shows than I do like when I'm on holiday or something? And obviously the first thing is that obviously you're on holiday, so you think, I've got to get that sun cream on, whereas you sort of forget. I'm in Britain, I'm not going to get burned going to Aldi or something. But then the other thing is, you're staring up into the sky, which you'd never do in any other circumstance for 12 hours? Well, maybe not 12 hours, but for a decent chunk of the day. And you would go on holiday and just be like, yeah.
Do we think there's going to be anything come September shows?
I think so. I think there'll be some things, but I don't think it'll be conventional. So where are we now? Middle of May, well, not quite the middle of May. I think September events are doable, but I think what the airshow industry is going to have to worry about is that people have not got their aviation fix at all. This is, in some respects, this is different to, well, in many respects, it's different to the cancellation of Riyadh in 2008, if we're taking Riyadh as an example, because there were other air shows to think, well, at least I managed to do Legends and Farnborough or whatever that year.
Yeah, sure.
A couple of Duxfords, a couple of Shuttleworths or whatever. There's none of that so far, so I think that if there is a September event that does go ahead, or events,
it will be.
There's going to be, there's going to be a massive, and that's not just air shows. That's anything. Some of the late festivals like Creamfields or something will be the same thing, and I think that's going to have its own problems because people who might be like, I'm not going to bother with going to Cosby or the Ducks for September air show or Shuttleworth at the end of September or something. They're going to be like, that's going to be my only chance of an air show this year. And that's, not knowing what's going to happen over the course of however many months. I mean, look how quickly it's changed between the 1st of March and the 1st of May. So we just don't know. But I think there would be capacity for stuff in September because we're doing things about the virus now, but what might be the thing that undoes it is the fact that there's going to be so many enthusiasts that are desperate to get some sort of fix.
It is crazy. It is genuinely crazy.
That they might just be like, look, let's just write it off for the whole year.
No, because they'll need the money. These operators will need the money, and the airfields will need the money. No, these places...
but maybe that's already nixed. I don't know. You know, I mean, if you know some events are already cancelled because the wording of COSFID, they said the COSFID Airshow said that it was postponed, not cancelled, and I thought that was a really weird take.
Maybe that's just a just in case thing.
Maybe
I'd love it to be postponed. I'd love it to be put on.
Yeah, 100%. And if they can fill their coffers, obviously that's a great thing. But I don't know. I mean, then it's getting down to insurance, and other stuff, and what cover. Yeah.
Tickets will sell out instantly.
I was just wondering, just when you were saying about postponed shows, when is like the first postponed show in the season? I'm not talking about shows that are due to go ahead at the end of the year. I mean, I know like Abingdon's postponed to at some point in August.
I wouldn't think you can really take any fixed dates at the moment as gospel.
So it looks as though, from having a quick Google whilst you were speaking, that anything up to the end of July is binned. Anything from the start of August is tentatively as is at the moment. So the earliest air show that's not either been cancelled or postponed, I think, is the East Kirkby Air Show on August 1st. But, I mean, people should do their own research and obviously shouldn't rely on what I'm saying from a quick Google. But that's where it appears to be at the moment.
Right. I wouldn't think, because even if they could, host the shows in August, if they're allowed the gatherings, who's going to be able to display? There won't have been any safe amount of time to work displays up and to get hours in and currency, and I'm sure the pilots will be up in the planes. Well, actually, they already, was it Arco already put the Blue Spitfire up, the PR, whatever?
Yeah, that was up.
Yeah. So the stuff's going up, but I don't think they're going to be able to do much display practice during lockdown, and they'll be in the planes as soon as they can. But just it's safe. It's just not to be a Debbie Downer, but safety is going to be a bit of a potential issue if you're holding early air shows.
Tell a lie. Actually, I think the earliest air show that I can find whilst Googling, whilst you're speaking, earliest air show is Headcorn on 27th of June. That's obviously not going to happen.
They just forgot to announce it.
Yeah, Battle of... Well, exactly, it might be an issue, I think. But interestingly, Old Warden is obviously keeping on tabs with this because they had to cancel their season premiere and other stuff as well. But they haven't so far cancelled their military air show on the 5th of July, nor their July evening air show, and Stowe Maries haven't cancelled their 18th to 19th July air show. So maybe over that React weekend, there could be a Shuttleworth or a Stowe Maries event, but I think that's optimistic at best. But August seems to be the time when lots of air shows that were organised in August are staying for the moment. Clacton has said that they're closely monitoring the situation, but who knows? It's probably not safe to rely on anything.
I really, really hope that Cosby does go ahead this year, being in the last year as well.
Yeah, Cosby would be amazing to go to.
Who was it that said that they might, it might get postponed to next year anyway? Or is it definitely, can they just literally not have another one next year?
Depends on insurance and stuff. Depends on what the contract is. If the contract just says, 15 air shows, then in some respects it might not matter when you have them. You can have one year and then have a 3-year absence and then have the rest and have it over 18 years or something. It depends entirely on what their contract says, which obviously we're not privy to, and also it depends on what insurance says. But if they cancelled it and then didn't have a final air show, that would be a great show.
Be a huge show. I've still never been to one.
So good,
it's
good,
brilliant.
I would be very, very keen to go. And I mean, the funny thing was this year there was that that weekend. It was meant to have Cosby, it was meant to have Milan, it was meant to have Sanacol, and I think it was. I mean, there was an air show in Hungary that I was even looking at as well. That, you know, who knows whether these things. Obviously, Sanacol's cancelled. Milan's weird because they're still saying they're going ahead.
Well, I got the registration email on this week
Yeah, same.
for their spotters pack, and they're piling in with the announcements as well.
They are.
They got half a Duxford going over.
But that's what I love about Milan, is that essentially half the participation list is British warbirds.
Which, imagine as a French enthusiast as well, that'd be like...
It's very heavily supported. It's half of Duxford making the journey over, and it's brilliant to see that support.
So good.
For the overseas show. I don't know if there's just a lot of money involved or what, but it is great. But that's a great little event. I wasn't planning on going to this year, but you know, who knows.
I know, jumping back to what we talked about earlier, like what we're doing sort of this time of the year, a big part for me is like, you know, you're booking for me, do the occasional show abroad, like one show a year abroad, and there's none of that this year. Like, you know, you've got like your La Ferté LA or the guys that go further afield to like Oshkosh and stuff like that, and there's none of that at all now either. So to have something like, if Milan does go ahead, that'll be a huge buzz for people, you know, even more so possibly than attending an air show in your back garden saying, oh, I can do a foreign show this year.
And with the amount of money that people will have saved by not going to UK air shows throughout the season.
Exactly.
See, I thought I was saving money, but I think I'm still just spending it on my models now.
Yeah, Cosby is, as an air show, fantastic, but it has been neutered to an extent by just the Civil Aviation Authority. I don't know, it's just gone through so many years of just will they sort of won't they, which is another reason why I think actually it's probably a bit of a misnomer to call this year their 15th and final air show, because I was there in 2017 when the air show director, the flying display director, we were ready at the crowd line, and the only thing that was there was the C-47, the Aces High C-47, and that turned up the night before, and nothing else was there. And the flying display director walked down the crowd line and told everyone, or as many people as he could, that he was like, sorry guys, it's cancelled, because what the CAA required was just ridiculous. And it said something like, it stipulated like a height and speed restriction at one end of the airfield. It said and the pilot who was on the ground, who was trying to work out how that would work, said, well, the only way that you would be able to do that is if you were in something like an F-16 or a Typhoon. So a Spitfire or a Corsair or, you know, P-40, it's got absolutely no chance. And so they just binned it off the morning off, which is good in respect that it's not just an air show. It's, you know, you've got so many military vehicles and stuff, and it's like, it's just the whole dynamic of it. It's completely different to any other air show. But without that, I think there would have been a lot of very unhappy punters.
Is the CAA still dicking around with that kind of stuff, or was that they sort of eased
So
off?
So I didn't go in 2018 because 2017 I was like, right, that's it. I'm not committing to that until I'm not spending money and petrol and everything else. Obviously moving to South Wales as well, as you know, so it's even further away. Going to it if the same thing's going to happen again. So, but 2018 seemed great, and then 2019 was pretty good. It's not the same as what it was. A lot of warbirds seem to have been reduced to just doing topside bypass, but
which is fine.
Yeah, I've got not a huge amount of objection for that. It's great photography wise, but that's all it seems to be. There's no sort of dynamic displays like it was. Like I've said a lot about Cosby. I've sung its praises from the rafters, but 2015 was one of the most perfect air shows I've attended. It was so good. And it didn't even have that much there, and the flying display was quite short compared to most shows, but it was just so the combination of everything was so good. But it doesn't seem to have managed to recapture that. Of course, the irony is as well, I should add, 2015, right? It was the weekend after Short, and it was near as perfect an air show as it could possibly be, including an amazing display by the Meteor. 2016, it was properly neutered. I tweeted from UK Airshow Review Twitter, which was probably a bit maybe rash in hindsight, but I just said, I was like, this display has absolutely been neutered, because everything was so far away, and on a really weird axis. It just didn't work the same as it's sort of like it was like a 45-degree angle to the actual runway, but the crowd line was along the runway. So if you were one end of the crowd line, the flying display was miles away, and if you were at the other end, it was like at a 45-degree angle to you. So everyone had to twist. It was really weird. It was like the red arrows in quite. It was like Dom and Ian, and Dan, you were all there in 2017, and the red arrows had that really weird display axis angle, and it was the same thing.
I think the Typhoon as well was
Typhoon
that weird jaunty angle.
It did, but the Typhoon broke, didn't it? So no one, it did one pass and climbed into the clouds because its ECS broke. But it was really weird. It's one of those things that you just can't really like. It's just like, why, Especially as the week after Shoreham in 2015, it was perfect. So 2016 wasn't that great, and also the weather was pretty average on when I went. 2017, they just said we can't do it because they were making efforts to get back to the original axis. The only reason they did that was because people complained about the 2016 performance. 2018 and 2019, they seem to have sorted a happy compromise. So it's actually, but thinking about the fact that 2017 was a cancelled air show, it is a bit of a misnomer to say it's its final and last air show. But maybe the contracts are what the contracts are. Maybe the wording doesn't account for that.
It's strange though, because the flying display is like 2 hours, isn't it? In the afternoon, it's pretty much nothing at all.
Yeah,
in the grand scheme of
100%.
But what's there? I mean, I think it was 2016. The C5 was there. I was pretty much new on the scene then.
2015, the C5 first. The C5 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stuff that they've had there, it's been utterly bonkers. The things they've been able to get. But like I say, just for 2 hours, it's a show towards the end of the year. It would really be, if they couldn't pull it together, it would be a sad loss. Yeah,
and they pack it in. I mean, you're right. It's only a couple of hours. It starts at 2:00. It has a break in the middle or something. And they pack so much into it, but it is really good. Like last year, I actually thought was the most memorable tribute to D-Day, because they had the C-47s there operating from the Ross Strip, and they actually had paratroopers jumping with original World War II canopies.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure was it seen at Duxford?
They tried to do it at Duxford, but I mean, when me and Sam went, the weather was so poor they just couldn't jump. They were meant to, because they were meant. I think it was something like 300 parachutists were meant to use these round canopies, and they just couldn't do it. But I think it turned out that Cosby was the only one that they did it at. Yeah,
it's just one of those weird shows that it just gets that sort of. It's a bit like the Jersey Air display. It's a shame Scott's not here to talk about it because he goes a lot. But they just get such unique stuff, but it's so off the radar.
Don't they get a B-52 every year?
I don't know. Do they?
At Jersey, I'm sure they do.
They always get the Swedish Air Force Historic.
I was going to say,
always there.
Yeah, Swedish Historics are one of the huge pools, and I don't understand why Jersey managed to do it when they can't. They display over the coast or over the water, or whether the CAA allow it at Jersey and not anywhere else. But
wasn't Jersey the first quote UK air show to get the Elysee and stuff like that?
Don't know.
Yeah, I think it was actually.
I've not been, so.
I think
it's one of those, again, another show that I'm just like, shall I go this year? And then I've either spent too much money by that point, or it doesn't coincide with something properly, or does coincide, I should say. That every single year I think, oh, damn, I should have gone, because there's always something that's perfect.
I think the later shows in the year, I tend to miss them, because I just feel a bit burned out. May, June, July, just pack them all in, and just after that, it's just, I need a break.
Yeah, post REAT in particular, is such a you're exhausted after REAT that you do need to take a break.
And that was going to lead me on to my next thing, which is Jersey always seems to get a obviously because it's close, a good smattering of the French world, but it's like the Flamand duo tend to go to Jersey.
Oh, the Flamands are special as well.
I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but I think Patuil Tranchant have been there as well, with the with their team, and I think the only problem with Jersey, because I've always thought about doing it, because when working at Flybe I could have flown down there. It's facing directly into the sun all day, So it's just no good for photos. Which I know you can't base an entire air show around that, but it makes it a bit annoying.
I wish I'd gone down to Bournemouth last year.
Oh yeah,
just to see some of the Swedes coming. I saw some of the photos on the forum. I mean, I miss Dawlish. One of my friends used to go pretty much regularly, and I know you used to get some really good photos going across the bay. And I really wish that I'd done something like that.
Oh, I went to a couple of Dawlish shows, and because I used to live down in Exeter, so it was incredibly close, and that was always a great atmosphere, really really nice venue. And yeah, we used to go up on the hill, and genuinely, it's one of those things that just stands out forever. But it was things like the mid-air squadron Canberra, because a lot of the displays used to basically run in for the beachfront. This was, in fact, the last one was the same day as Shoreham. I remember being on the hill and the news coming through. Gosh, but it was a lot of the displays would do their running down the hill, so you'd be sat there and you'd suddenly have this Canberra tearing down above your head about 100 feet, and the noise and just looking up and seeing it coming down was extraordinary. Of course, you're not going to, well, not only because the show's been cancelled, but you're not going to get that kind of thing anymore.
When I joined the UKAR staff team in 2014, one of the first things I did, other than helping with Andy's interview with Tim Prince, was think up of a pun title for Abingdon 2014, and that was the debut of the Mid-Air Squadron Canberra and the Hunters. But I don't know whether the Hunters had displayed in previous guises, but it was the debut of the Canberra in a flying display, I think. And I don't know, it just made this really great whistling noise. So the pun I thought of was country music, because it was air and country show back then. And that was my first piece of work for the UKAR staff team.
Nice.
I've done nothing more valuable than that since.
I mean, I remember even the Red Arrows used to do special little fly pasts for the hill. It was very popular with the pilots; they loved it. But what's happened to the Canberra? There used to be a Canberra.
Stuck at Kemble.
It's sat in Kemble next to its donor aircraft.
There used to be a Canberra flying on the UK airshow circuit in private hands.
They offered it to the Indian Air Force historic flight. So at Coventry they restored that amazing looking Dakota, or DC-3 or C-47, whatever particular, call it what you will. It's now like displaying like a champ in India, and they offered it to the Indian Air Force. And I think there's a lot of people that were like, "Oh, why should that happen?" But it's like, well, it's sort of sat in a hangar, it's not doing much here,
no one here's buying now, though.
I thought they'd actually bought it.
No, it was off. Well, they might have done. As far as I know, that they'd offered it instead of Google. But yeah, it was weird. It was like one of those, sort of operated for a year in 2014, and then it just was like.
I remember when I moved down to Bournemouth for union flight training, and being based at the airport was great. Because I remember in the first weekend that I was there, it was the weekend that the Sea Vixen, so on the Friday the Sea Vixen left for Yeovilton on its final ever departure from Bournemouth. The two Lancasters were based there for the weekend at Goodwood Revival, and the entire mid-air squadron was there with the two Hunters and the Canberra, and also the resident Nat that sometimes taxied around was out and about. It was like this weird weekend of it was almost an air show that wasn't an air show, and it went from that. And then I'm thinking about it now, and essentially none of that's happening now.
It's unthinkable.
Because obviously the Canberra's gone, the Hunters have gone, the Canadian Lancaster's obviously back in Canada, and the Nat is now at North Weald being restored to airworthiness. But it was one of those amazing, amazing weekends where everything and anything was there.
There's just so much scope. It feels like on the point of classic jets, and I know we've talked about this at length before privately, but with classic jets it feels like the entire UK scene has just been destroyed almost. But you say that though, but there's so much there just waiting in, sort of like waiting around the corner. I think there's a lot more hope to be had in the scene than there currently feels, because there's just so much about that's just kept right. Yeah, I don't know what the state of what was the camera? Was it XH134?
Yeah, it was 134.
Yeah.
Which, side note, I don't want to dig up this can of worms. We can talk about it in a minute, but I don't know why the Vulcan to the Sky Trust didn't obtain that one, and they obtained one at Coventry, which is far from airworthy. But perhaps another discussion. But it's just like
its own podcast.
So there's that at Kemble. There's numerous hunters about. There's like, I mean, to be fair, there's JPs and Strike Masters that hit up the circuit most years anyway. But there's the Nats at North Weald. There's the hunters about. There's the Royal Navy Seahawk at Shawbury, which I know I've mentioned these before to you guys, but there's a lot there that isn't that far away. And I think if just the culture of enjoying classic jets could return to the UK airshow scene, then I think it wouldn't be what it was, but it would be richer than I think we all give it credit for when thinking about it right now.
Well, they taxied the Jaguar. Was it Jaguars at Bentwaters earlier in the year? And
With afterburners.
Yeah, and
Crazy.
there's also the Harrier on the register, isn't there?
Yeah.
At the start of the year, so that's something hopefully we can look forward to.
I mean, you'd hope, right?
As you've said before, it's just going to take one event organiser just to book a hunter. We're all going to see how brilliant it is, how much we've missed not only the hunters but the sound of a classic jet.
I mean, seeing the hunters at the French air shows the last couple of years, you miss them so much. They're such an icon.
Yeah, 100%. And I guarantee, like what Dom was saying, I guarantee that all it's going to take, I think, well, it's probably a bit, there's a lot more nuance behind it, but all it's going to take is for a hunter to do like a really good blue note at a UK air show, and for just videos of that just to be, I mean, they'll just go all over social media, and then people will be like, oh my god, like it's been 5 years since I've heard that sound, at the very least, probably longer for some people. That's
Papers will do their
that's all it's going to take.
Death jet headlines.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. I'm not sure it will. I just think the press and everything else has moved on. I mean, there'll be some sort of gutter rags that try and make a thing of it, but a safe and competent and evocative display doesn't need to. They don't need to fly the rivets off it. Which arguably they don't need to do that with any warbird. I'll take graceful and sedate any day of the week rather than boom and zoom. But I don't know. Yeah, you're right. 1 or 2 hunter displays, and for that video, the blue note to go around social media, people will go, "Oh my god, I can't believe how much I missed that." And then the next show that has the hunter will be like, that'll be a star participant. Even React, if React could say, right, we've got the Dutch or the Swiss hunter performing a display. In 2011, when they had Team Viper, they were like, oh yeah, cool, because it's the 40th anniversary or something. Now, if React did it in the normal course proceedings, notwithstanding the virus, obviously, if they just had a hunter display, it might be far away, it might be quite high, but all it's going to take is one blue note, and for everyone to hear it and almost feel it. It's gonna do so much to restore faith in the classic jet scene.
So, I think that's probably all from us for today, for the first episode. Let us know what you thought. If you haven't already, go along to forums.airshows.co.uk, sign up for our forums, become a member, and you can chat about the podcast, chat about air shows, how the closure of the airshow season has affected you, how you're getting your aviation fixed during this time, and let us know what you'd like to hear from the podcast in the future, if there's any subjects you'd like us to touch on. And I think all that probably remains for us to say now is goodbye. So hopefully come back to you with another episode in the not too distant future.